The invitation came on a quiet afternoon when everything felt fragile but calm. She was sitting near the window, watching her daughter play with colored pencils on the floor, when her phone buzzed. It was a message from her mother. A family party at her parents' house. Nothing special, just food, music, and everyone together again. She stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling a mix of hope and fear settle in her chest. It had been a long time since things felt normal in the family. There were arguments before, small ones at first, then bigger ones that left silence behind them. Still, she wanted to believe that time healed everything. She wanted to believe that family meant safety, that blood created a kind of invisible shield. Most of all, she wanted her daughter to grow up surrounded by relatives, laughter, and memories that did not hurt. She read the message again and imagined her parents' house filled with familiar voices. She remembered birthdays from the past, the smell of food in the kitchen, and the sound of people talking over each other. Those memories felt warm, like something she wanted to return to. She looked at her daughter and thought that maybe this party could be a fresh start. Maybe this was a chance to pretend that nothing bad ever happened. Her sister Linda would be there too. That thought made her pause. Linda had always been strong and loud, the kind of person who liked attention. Growing up, Linda was often praised for being bold and funny, while she was the quiet one who tried to keep peace. Even as adults, that pattern never really changed. Linda spoke freely, sometimes without thinking, and she learned to stay silent, telling herself that it was easier that way. Their relationship was complicated. There were moments of closeness, late-night talks, shared secrets. But there were also moments that felt sharp and uncomfortable. Small comments that sounded like jokes but left a strange feeling behind. Looks that lasted a second too long. She noticed those things, but she told herself she was being sensitive. She told herself that sisters fight, and sisters forgive. When she thought about the party, she remembered the last time they were all together. Linda had made a joke that embarrassed her in front of everyone. People laughed, and she forced a smile, feeling small. Later, she told herself it did not matter. It was just words. She convinced herself that peace was more important than speaking up. She always did that. As she typed a reply to her mother, she felt that familiar habit return. Ignore the warning signs. Do not make problems. Keep things calm for the child. She believed that if she stayed careful and quiet, nothing bad would happen. After all, this was family. This was her parents' home. What could really go wrong? She accepted the invitation. In the days before the party, she tried to focus on the good. She bought a small dress for her daughter and watched her spin around in front of the mirror, laughing. That sound made her heart soften. She imagined her daughter running around the house with her cousins, safe and happy. That image gave her courage. Still, late at night, doubts whispered in her mind. She remembered moments when Linda crossed lines and then smiled as if nothing happened. She remembered how easily people laughed things off. But every time those thoughts came, she pushed them away. She told herself that this time would be different. People grow up. People change. The morning of the party arrived, and she felt nervous energy in her body. She dressed carefully, choosing clothes that made her feel steady. She brushed her daughter's hair slowly, gently, like a small promise of protection. As they got into the car, she took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was doing this. She wanted normal. She wanted family. She wanted to believe in something good. During the drive, her daughter talked about cake and music, her voice full of excitement. Listening to her, she smiled and nodded, hiding the tight feeling in her chest. She told herself that she was doing the right thing. She told herself that love was stronger than fear. When they finally reached her parents' house, she saw cars parked outside and heard laughter through the open windows. For a moment, her worries faded. It looked like a normal family gathering. Warm, loud, familiar. She held her daughter's hand tightly as they walked inside, carrying hope with her like something fragile. She did not know that this hope would soon break. She did not know that the decision to ignore small warning signs would change everything. But at that moment, standing at the door, she truly believed she was bringing her child into a safe place. The moment she stepped inside the house, sound wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. Music played softly from the living room, mixed with loud laughter and voices talking all at once. The smell of cooked food filled the air, warm and familiar. For a brief second, she felt relief. Everything looked normal. Too normal. People turned to greet her, smiles appearing quickly. Hugs were given, light and rushed. Her parents looked happy, busy moving between guests, proud that the house was full again. She returned their smiles, trying to let that comfort sink in. This was what she wanted. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Her daughter stayed close to her side at first, holding her hand tightly. The child's eyes were wide, taking everything in. Balloons were tied near the stairs, and colorful plates were stacked on the table. Someone waved at her daughter and called her name, and she smiled shyly in return. Seeing that small smile made her heart soften again. She guided her daughter into the living room, where other children were already playing. Toys were scattered across the floor, and cartoons played quietly on the television. It looked safe. It looked harmless. She knelt down and reminded her daughter to stay where she could be seen. Her daughter nodded, already distracted by the toys and laughter. As she stood up, she noticed Linda across the room. Linda was surrounded by people, laughing loudly, telling a story with big hand movements. She looked confident and relaxed, enjoying the attention. When their eyes met, Linda smiled and waved like nothing had ever been wrong. That smile made her stomach tighten slightly. Still, she waved back, choosing politeness over honesty, as she always did. She moved toward the kitchen, helping her mother with small tasks. Plates were passed, food was arranged, drinks were poured. People talked about work, about life, about things that did not matter. She answered questions politely, laughing when expected. On the outside, she looked calm. Inside, she felt alert, like she was waiting for something she could not name. Every few minutes, her eyes searched the room for her daughter. She watched her play, talk, laugh. The child seemed happy, safe among family. Each time she saw her, she felt a little more relaxed. Maybe she had worried for nothing. Maybe this really was just a normal party. Linda walked into the kitchen at one point and stood beside her. She felt her presence before hearing her voice. Linda made a comment about how grown her daughter looked, how fast children change. The words sounded kind, but the tone felt strange. She smiled anyway, nodding, not wanting to read too much into it. Linda laughed and said something about kids being fun to play jokes on. The word joke caught her attention, but she brushed it off. People joke all the time, she told herself. It means nothing. She did not ask questions. She never did. Time passed, and the house grew louder. People moved from room to room. Children ran around, and adults talked over music. At some point, her daughter ran up to her and asked if she could go upstairs with her cousin. She hesitated for a moment. Upstairs felt farther away, out of sight. She looked around and saw familiar faces. Her parents were there. Linda was there. This was family. She smiled and agreed, reminding her daughter to stay with the others. She watched the children disappear up the stairs, then turned back to the conversation in front of her. That was the moment she would later replay in her mind again and again. She laughed at a story someone told. She tasted food and commented on how good it was. She answered questions and nodded along. Minutes passed. Maybe more. She did not notice when the laughter around her changed tone, when it became sharper, louder in a way that felt wrong. Something inside her shifted. She looked toward the stairs without knowing why. Her heart beat faster for no clear reason. She told herself to relax, but her body did not listen. She excused herself and began walking toward the stairs, each step feeling heavier than the last. Halfway there, she heard laughter. Louder now. Coming from upstairs. It did not sound kind. She stopped for a moment, her hand gripping the railing. A cold feeling spread through her chest, slow and deep. She did not know what she was about to see, but she knew, somehow, that the normal feeling she had held onto since arriving was gone. The house was still full of people, full of noise, full of life. But as she climbed the stairs, all she could hear was her own heartbeat and the growing fear that something had already gone terribly wrong. She reached the top of the stairs slowly, her steps quiet, almost careful, as if the house itself might hear her fear. The laughter grew clearer with every step. It came from one of the bedrooms. Children's voices mixed with adult laughter. Something about that felt wrong. Adults should not laugh like that around children. She stood in the hallway for a second, frozen. The door at the end was half open. Light spilled out, bright and sharp. Her heart was beating so fast it felt painful. She told herself she was overthinking, that this was just noise, just family being loud. Still, her feet moved on their own. As she pushed the door open, the world seemed to slow. At first, her eyes did not understand what they were seeing. Her daughter stood in the middle of the room, very still. Hair that should have framed her small face was gone. Her head looked bare, uneven, wrong. Clumps of hair lay scattered on the floor like something broken. For a moment, she could not breathe. Her daughter looked up and saw her. Her eyes were wide, glassy, confused. She did not cry. That was the part that hurt the most. She stood there, silent, like she did not know what she was allowed to feel. The room felt too loud and too quiet at the same time. Someone laughed again. The sound echoed in her head like a crack. She felt her knees weaken, and she grabbed the doorframe to stay standing. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. This was not a joke. This was not harmless. This was her child. She rushed forward, pulling her daughter into her arms. She felt the smoothness of her head under her hand, felt the child's body tremble slightly. Only then did her daughter begin to cry, small broken sounds pressed into her chest. She held her tightly, rocking her, whispering words she barely understood herself. Her eyes lifted, searching the room. There were scissors on the table. A chair pushed back too far. A few people stood nearby, some smiling, some awkwardly silent. And then she saw Linda. Linda stood near the wall, arms crossed, watching. Her face held a smile, casual and careless. It was the same smile she used when she crossed lines and expected forgiveness. Seeing it in that moment sent a wave of heat through her body. She asked what happened, her voice shaking, louder than she expected. No one answered right away. The silence felt heavy, guilty. Then Linda laughed lightly and shrugged. She said it was just a joke. Those words felt unreal. They floated in the air like they did not belong to the scene. Just a joke. As if hair grew back instantly. As if fear and shame were funny. As if her daughter was a toy. Something inside her broke open. She looked down at her daughter again, at the small hands clutching her shirt, at the tears running silently down her face. Her child did not understand why this had happened. She had trusted the adults around her. She had trusted family. That trust was gone. Her thoughts raced, sharp and painful. How long had this been happening? Who watched and said nothing? Who thought this was funny? Guilt wrapped around her heart, heavy and cruel. She had allowed this. She had believed in safety where there was none. People began talking all at once. Some said it was not a big deal. Some said children forget things easily. Each word felt like another cut. No one seemed to see the damage clearly. No one seemed to feel the weight of what had been done. She stood up slowly, still holding her daughter. Her legs felt weak, but her grip was firm. She did not trust anyone to touch her child. Not anymore. She looked at Linda one last time. The laughter on Linda's face had faded slightly now, replaced with mild surprise, as if she did not expect this reaction. That hurt almost as much as the act itself. It showed how little she understood. Without saying anything else, she turned and walked out of the room. The hallway felt longer than before. Every step echoed. Downstairs, the party continued. Music played. People laughed. The normal life she had hoped for still existed below, untouched by what had just happened. She descended the stairs with her daughter in her arms, feeling separate from everyone else. Like she was walking through a different world. People noticed them and fell silent as they passed. Eyes followed them, curious, confused. She did not stop. She did not explain. She only focused on one thing: getting her child out of that house. As she reached the front door, she felt tears burn her eyes, but she refused to let them fall yet. She needed to be strong. She needed to be calm. Her daughter needed her more than ever. The door closed behind them with a soft sound. And in that moment, standing outside with her trembling child, she knew nothing would ever feel the same again. Outside, the air felt colder than before. The noise of the party was still there, leaking through the walls, but it sounded distant now, like it belonged to another life. She stood on the porch for a moment, holding her daughter close, trying to steady her breathing. Her daughter's cries were soft but deep, like they came from a place that words could not reach. She kissed the top of her daughter's head again and again, whispering that everything would be okay, even though she was not sure how to make that true yet. Her hands were shaking. Anger, fear, and shame twisted together inside her. She felt exposed, like she had failed at the one thing that mattered most. The front door opened behind her. Linda stepped outside, still smiling, though it was weaker now. She spoke in a light voice, as if trying to calm a situation that did not deserve calm. She said there was no need to make a scene. She said everyone was watching. She said it was just a joke. Those words hit her like a slap. She turned slowly, her body stiff. She looked at Linda and saw something clearly for the first time. Linda was not confused. She was not sorry. She was annoyed. Annoyed that the moment was no longer fun, annoyed that laughter had turned into tension. She asked Linda how shaving a child's head could ever be funny. Her voice was low, tight, controlled with effort. Linda rolled her eyes slightly and said children forget things fast. Hair grows back. No harm done. No harm done. The words echoed in her mind. She felt heat rise in her chest, spreading into her throat. She wanted to scream, to cry, to say everything she had held inside for years. Instead, she stood still, holding her daughter closer, letting the silence stretch between them. Linda crossed her arms and laughed again, smaller this time. She said she used to play jokes like this when they were kids. She said everyone was too sensitive now. She said she did not think it would be a big deal. That was when something inside her shifted. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was quiet and final. She realized that Linda had never respected her. Not then, not now. She realized that all the times she stayed silent, all the moments she chose peace over truth, had only taught Linda that there were no consequences. She had confused silence with strength, and now her child had paid the price. She told Linda to step back. Linda looked surprised. She had not expected resistance. She had expected forgiveness, like always. She took a step closer instead, reaching out as if to touch the child. That was the last line. She stepped back sharply, her eyes fierce. She told Linda not to come near her daughter again. Her voice was steady now, stronger than it had ever been around her sister. Linda's smile disappeared completely. People began to gather near the door. Whispers spread. Someone tried to calm things down, saying family should talk inside. Someone else suggested they were overreacting. Those words felt familiar, heavy with years of dismissal. She did not argue. She did not explain. She walked past them toward the car, each step firm. She placed her daughter in the back seat gently, buckling her in with shaking hands. Her daughter looked at her with red eyes, searching for answers. She smiled softly, even as tears finally spilled down her face. She told her daughter they were going home. Linda followed them to the driveway, still talking, still trying to defend herself. She said she did not mean it like that. She said she thought it would be funny. She said she was sorry if feelings were hurt. Sorry if feelings were hurt. That was not an apology. It was a way to avoid blame. Hearing it made her realize that Linda would never truly understand what she had done. And that realization hurt almost as much as the act itself. She got into the driver's seat and closed the door. For a moment, she rested her forehead against the steering wheel, breathing slowly, collecting herself. Then she started the engine. As she pulled away, she saw Linda standing there, arms crossed, watching the car leave. There was no regret on her face. Only confusion and irritation. That image burned itself into her memory. The drive home felt long and unreal. The streetlights passed by like quiet witnesses. Her daughter sat silently in the back seat, holding a small piece of hair she must have picked up without anyone noticing. Seeing that nearly broke her. She reached back at a red light and held her daughter's hand. Her daughter squeezed back gently, like she was afraid to let go. That simple touch filled her with a mix of pain and determination. She promised herself, silently, that this would never happen again. She promised that she would never ignore warning signs again, no matter how uncomfortable it felt to speak up. She promised that protecting her child would always come before keeping peace with anyone else. Family was supposed to mean safety. If it did not, then it meant nothing at all. And as the house disappeared behind them, she knew that some doors, once closed, should never be opened again. The house was quiet when they finally arrived home. Too quiet. The kind of silence that makes every small sound feel louder. She carried her daughter inside, holding her carefully, like she was made of glass. The lights felt too bright, the walls unfamiliar, even though this was their safe place. Safety felt shaken now. She helped her daughter sit on the couch and brought her a blanket. The child wrapped it tightly around herself, shrinking into it. Her eyes stayed low, avoiding mirrors, avoiding everything. That sight hurt more than any argument ever could. She sat beside her, unsure what to say. Words felt weak. How could she explain cruelty to a child who still believed the world was kind? She brushed her daughter's cheek gently and told her she was beautiful. She said it slowly, clearly, hoping the words would settle somewhere deep inside her. Her daughter asked in a small voice why it happened. The question cut through her. She swallowed hard and told her that sometimes people do wrong things and call them jokes. She said it was not her fault. She said she did nothing wrong. She repeated it again and again, afraid that one time would not be enough. Later that night, after her daughter finally fell asleep, she sat alone in the living room. The house felt heavy with thoughts. She replayed the day in her mind, every moment leading up to the party. Every choice she made. Every warning sign she ignored. Guilt wrapped around her chest, tight and unforgiving. She thought about trust. How easily she had given it away. How she had believed that shared blood meant shared care. Now that belief felt naive, almost dangerous. She walked into the bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Her face looked older than it had that morning. Her eyes carried something new. Not just sadness, but clarity. She saw a woman who had learned too late, but not too late to change. The next few days were hard. Her daughter avoided school at first, afraid of questions, afraid of stares. She held her hand tightly every morning, walking her to the door. Some children were curious. Some were kind. Some laughed. Each reaction felt like another test of strength. She spoke to teachers. She explained only what was necessary. She asked for care, for awareness. She learned how strong her voice could be when fear no longer controlled it. At home, she let her daughter talk when she wanted and stay silent when she needed. She listened more than she spoke. She learned that healing did not follow rules or timelines. Some days were better. Some days were not. Family members called. Some asked what happened. Some defended Linda. Some said it was being taken too seriously. Hearing those words no longer surprised her. They no longer hurt the same way either. Something had hardened inside her, not in anger, but in resolve. She set boundaries. She said her daughter would not be around people who laughed at her pain. She said apologies mattered, but actions mattered more. Some people understood. Many did not. She accepted that. Linda never truly apologized. There were messages, short and cold. Explanations disguised as excuses. She read them once and did not reply. She realized that closure did not always come from the other person. Sometimes it came from walking away. She focused on rebuilding trust. Not with everyone, but with herself. She learned to listen to the feeling in her chest, the quiet warning she had ignored for so long. She promised never to silence it again. Slowly, her daughter began to smile more. She laughed at small things. She played without covering her head. One evening, she stood in front of the mirror and touched her growing hair, smiling just a little. That moment felt like light breaking through clouds. She knelt beside her and hugged her tightly, careful not to cry too much. She wanted her daughter to remember strength, not just pain. Some nights, When the house was dark and still, the memories returned. The laughter. The scissors. The word joke. But they no longer controlled her. They reminded her of who she needed to be. She had learned that love was not proven by staying quiet. It was proven by standing up, even when your voice shook. She had learned that family was not defined by names or history, but by how people treated the most vulnerable among them. And most importantly, she had learned that protecting her child meant protecting herself too. The world still felt uncertain at times. Trust did not come easily anymore. But when she looked at her daughter sleeping peacefully, she knew she had chosen the right path. Some losses were necessary. Some bridges were meant to burn. And sometimes, the hardest lessons created the strongest mothers. Time passed, slow at first, then a little faster. Days turned into weeks, and the shock of what happened settled into something quieter but deeper. The pain did not disappear, but it changed shape. It became something she carried with her, something that reminded her to stay alert, to stay strong. Her daughter's hair began to grow back, soft and uneven. She watched it carefully, almost like watching a wound heal. Every small change felt important. Sometimes her daughter touched her head without thinking. Sometimes she asked questions that had no easy answers. She answered honestly, without adding fear. She wanted her daughter to feel safe again, not trapped in that memory. They created new routines. Quiet mornings with breakfast together. Walks in the evening when the sun was low. Small moments that rebuilt trust. She learned that healing often lived in simple things, not big promises. Inside herself, she felt different. She was more careful now. Not afraid, but aware. She noticed how people spoke, how they treated her child, how they reacted to boundaries. When something felt wrong, she no longer ignored it. She listened. That change gave her strength she never knew she had. Family gatherings stopped. Some relatives drifted away, uncomfortable with the distance she kept. Others stayed silent, choosing not to take sides. She let them go without chasing explanations. She no longer needed approval. Protecting her peace mattered more. One afternoon, her mother called and asked when things could go back to normal. The question stayed with her long after the call ended. Normal, she realized, was not something she wanted anymore. Normal had required silence. Normal had asked her to accept pain quietly. She chose something better than normal. She chose safe. She chose honest. She chose strong. Sometimes, late at night, guilt tried to return. It whispered that she should have seen it coming, that she should have stayed closer, that she should not have trusted so easily. When those thoughts came, she reminded herself of the truth. She had acted out of love. Love was never the mistake. One evening, her daughter climbed into her bed and rested her head against her arm. She looked up and asked if she was still beautiful. The question broke her heart and healed it at the same time. She held her close and said yes. She said beauty did not live in hair or appearance. She said beauty lived in kindness, courage, and honesty. She said the world could be cruel, but it could also be gentle, and they would choose gentleness whenever they could. Her daughter smiled and closed her eyes. In that quiet moment, she felt something settle inside her. A sense of purpose. She was no longer just reacting to what happened. She was shaping what came next. Months later, she saw Linda at a distance, at a place they both happened to be. There was no confrontation. No words exchanged. Just a brief glance. Linda looked away first. That told her everything she needed to know. She did not feel anger anymore. She felt free. Free from the need to explain. Free from the weight of old expectations. Free from believing that love had to hurt to be real. She understood now that forgiveness did not always mean letting people back into your life. Sometimes it meant releasing yourself from the burden of waiting for them to change. She forgave quietly. Then she moved on. Her daughter grew stronger too. More confident. More open. The memory did not define her. It became part of her story, but not the whole story. Watching that growth filled her with pride that words could not express. She began to speak up more, not just for her child, but for herself. At school meetings. With friends. In everyday moments where silence once felt easier, she discovered that her voice mattered. Looking back, she understood that the party had taken something from her, but it had also given her something powerful. Clarity. Boundaries. Courage. She would never forget what happened. But she would also never forget what she learned. That love without protection is not love. That laughter at someone's pain is not harmless. That peace built on silence is fragile. And that a mother's strength often appears only when it is tested. Her life was quieter now, smaller in some ways, but stronger at its core. When she looked at her daughter laughing freely, hair growing, eyes bright, she knew she had done the hardest thing a parent can do. She had chosen her child over comfort. She had chosen truth over tradition. She had chosen safety over family. And in doing so, she had found a deeper kind of peace. One that no joke could ever take away.